Well, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us at our first Bookmark That session for FemFoundry. We are so excited today because Rya Hazelwood from Relentless Optimism is here to talk about her book, a very personal and powerful message that she has to share with us today. We are excited to have FemFoundry in pre-launch phase. We are officially launching in early 2026, but we have all sorts of things going on between now and the end of the calendar year. So really excited about all that is to come and happy to talk more about that if you have any questions later. Also happy to see some of our current members on this call as well, Jennifer and Alicia. So welcome. And let's start first, as we like to do. And since we have a smaller group, we have the luxury of doing this. I'd love to just quickly go around and have everyone say who you are, what you do, where you're from, and why you decided to jump on today. And we'll do that, and then we'll transition it over to Rya. So I'll start and throw it to Jen.
Awesome. Thank you. I am Jen Renshaw. I'm the founder and CEO of Brandmark Digital. We are a digital marketing agency that specializes in HubSpot and marketing automation and AI consulting, basically the tech operations side of marketing. And I am based out of Nashville, Tennessee, and joined today because it has been a rough go of things. And I actually just got off of a call with my second in command, who I had to have a very difficult conversation with, and potentially, going on disability for a little while and all of that. And so I was like, I think I need a little optimism right now. Yep.
Yeah. Oh, Jen, we're glad you're here. Thanks for sharing that with us. And we're
Yeah.
glad that you hopped on today. I know those conversations are never easy at all. So
Yes.
lots to process. And if we can be of help to you after this call, by all means, just our numbers.
Yes. Thank
You
you
don't
all.
mind, no mind, but I'll give it to you later.
Yes.
All right. Thanks. Meredith.
I'm Meredith Jolly, and I am a Vistage chair in the Atlanta. Well, I live in Athens, but my group is in Atlanta. And I've just known Kim, and from the moment I met her, value what she brings to the table, and I figure I'm just gonna ride her coattails into greatness.
That's currently my
Um,
plan too. Like no
Yeah,
pressure.
well, I think, fortunately, she's the person where it's a mindset of abundance, right? So I think there's probably room for all of us based on what I know of her. So thank you, Kim. And I've been trying to get to a FemFoundry event, and life has not been convenient. What does that mean? That's what we live for, right? But anyhow, I love books, and I just thought this would be a great way to sort of sneak in and start learning more about what's going on with FemFoundry. So, thank you for having me.
We're glad to have you. It's good to see you again.
Good to
It's been
see
a
you.
while.
It has too long.
Alicia.
So I'm Alicia Thompson. My company is Signature Leadership. I'm an executive coach, and I know Rya, love Rya. And Rya, I have to tell you, I found myself on Monday morning in the pouring rain and freezing on the side of the road with a flat tire in the middle of nowhere, South Carolina. And I must admit that the tenets in your book were things that I drew on as I thought I need some relentless optimism as I try to find a Lyft or Uber from the middle of nowhere to drive me back to Atlanta, as well as a tow truck. So thank you. This couldn't have been more timely.
Well, thank you for saying so. I'm so sorry you went through that. It is very difficult to figure out how a flat tire on the side of the road is life happening for you, but we're going to figure that out. We're going to figure it out somehow. We'll get there.
Amazing. Well, with that, I'm glad to have the introductions and feel free to put any questions you have along the way or things you want to kind of dive into a little bit more in the chat as we go, and then we'll come and pull that up at the end. Raya's got some stuff she's going to just cover overall. Really excited for this journey. And so, Raya, I'm going to transition it over to you.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I can't be more honored. I couldn't be more honored to be here. I am going to share my screen. So let me get that window up for us. And I am not going to do the thing that plagues my existence, which is asking you if you can see that. But if you can't, let me know. So good afternoon again. I'm so excited to be here with you guys, a group of such smart, capable, and ambitious women. It's such an honor. In full vulnerability, I do want to share that I drafted a whole new talk for today's session. This is the first time I've talked really directly about the book and not Relentless Optimism for Life and Leadership or within a more business context. So I'm probably going to reference my notes from time to time, and I want to really thank you in advance for your presence today and also your patience with that. That said, I am a mother of boys, a former corporate executive, a business builder, a mindset enthusiast, a resilient strategist, and above all, a relentless optimist. I also realize that all of you are to the left of my screen, so if I'm looking to the left, it's because I'm looking at you. I'm going to try and face forward. But my relentless optimism does not come from an easy life. It comes because life hasn't been easy, the opposite of easy, often. And it's because of those challenges that I had the opportunity to rise. And that's what I want to talk to you about here today. I don't know each of your stories, snippets from your introduction, so thank you for sharing. But I do know what it feels like to look like you have it all together on the outside, while on the inside you're secretly thinking like I'm one inconvenient email or flat tire away from a total meltdown. We all juggle businesses, we juggle families, deadlines, dreams. And somehow the world still expects us to do it all gracefully with perfect hair and flawless makeup, even post surgery. Kim, you're amazing. And while I'm not here today to talk directly about work-life balance or business strategy or leadership frameworks, even though I have spent a lot of time in those spaces, what I am here to talk about is something that I believe underpins both life and leadership. Because when you're managing a team or just managing to get out of bed in the morning, mindset is everything. And for me, that mindset is relentless optimism. It's become a thread that ties everything together for me. So over the past several months, I've been working on a version of this message called Relentless Optimism, The Leader's Edge. Because I believe it's not just helpful, I do believe that relentless optimism is a leadership superpower. But in the process of that, I veered a little bit away from my why. And I started losing the joy that this project was bringing to me. I was veering away from the heart of why I wrote this book and the truth of what started me on this journey to begin with. And Kim's especially, you didn't know it at the time, but this opportunity to do with this author talk really helped me bring me back to that why. It helped me re-engage with the reason I started chasing this dream in the first place. And that has reinvigorated me. It's brought a lot of passion and purpose back into this process. And I want to sincerely thank you for that. It also reinforced for me that our human stories do very much have business relevance because we don't live compartmentalized lives. We are all whole, complex, multifaceted people with work lives and parent lives, relationship lives, sister lives. And part of what this season has taught me is that while reconciling all of those identities can require vulnerability, living them out loud is powerful. In fact, I used to think that vulnerability would invite judgment, and it certainly can, and we'll talk more about that later. But what I've learned is this. By and large, authenticity and vulnerability don't push people away. They draw people in, and they invite others to be authentic and vulnerable as well. So today, what I want to share is not a 5-step formula. It's not a tidy list of takeaways. It's deeper than that. Today's talk is about what happens when life knocks you flat and how you rise anyway. It's going to be about grace, about courage, about the audacity to live fully and freely and to be unapologetically you. It's about choosing optimism, the kind that keeps you centered and brave when everything feels like it's falling apart, the kind of optimism that gives you space to heal and then calls you forward towards something better. So, yes, this talk is going to be very personal, but it's also deeply practical. Because when you choose to live your life with relentless optimism, it has the power to change everything. From the breakfast table to the boardroom, optimism isn't just a mindset, it is the great differentiator. Okay. Before we go any further, I do want to level set on something foundational to this and to my whole practice. Let's talk about what relentless optimism actually is and what it's not. Relentless optimism is not Pollyanna thinking. It's not pretending everything's fine while your world quietly crumbles behind the scenes. And it's definitely not magical thinking. I tried that one too. It's not about slapping a smile on a mess. It's not about ignoring reality. And it's not about bypassing pain, grief, or anger. Instead, relentless optimism is grounded, it's gritty. It's acknowledging the dark times and then deciding to believe in better, even when things are hard, even when you don't know how it's going to get better or what better might look like yet. It's the mindset that says, I may not know what tomorrow holds, but I refuse to believe that this is where the story ends. Optimism is a choice, it's a lens, and it's a daily discipline. It's a quiet kind of courage that keeps you moving forward, even when your legs are shaking and the road ahead feels steep and impossibly long. It's also, quite honestly, a strategy. Relentless optimism is a competitive advantage. It's a mindset that doesn't just help you survive, it helps you thrive and create the life you've always dreamed of. And over time, when you practice it, live it, and lead with it, I truly believe that it becomes a superpower. Relentless optimism is what helped me rebuild when everything fell apart. It gave me strength when I felt scared, unsure, and small. It helped me raise my voice when I had been trained to shrink. And it's what helped me start again when the blueprint I had built for my life went up in flames. And that's where we'll begin today. We're going to talk about the stories behind those lessons, the experiences that I've lived through that shaped my book, Relentless Optimism, and other life goals. Now, I know, Alicia, you mentioned you read it, and I'm so grateful. If you haven't had time yet, this book is part memoir, part guidebook. It's raw, it's honest, and it's written with the intention of showing anyone going through their own storm that they are not alone, and hopefully offering a supportive hand along the way. I wrote this book for the woman who is smiling through pain, or maybe even just barely surviving the day. I wrote it for the leader who's successful on paper, but maybe lonely in her truth. And I wrote it for the dreamer who's quietly wondering if it's too late to start again, because it's not. The book is organized into 3 parts. Part 1 shares my journey through my first marriage to an alcoholic, a man I once deeply loved, but whose addiction and anger reshaped every corner of our lives. Layered on top of that was a physically and emotionally grueling IVF journey. It was a 3-year battle that tested every ounce of my resilience, hope, and resolve. Part 2 recounts my second marriage, one that, to be honest, probably should have been annulled. We'll get into that. And while my attorney has gently reminded me that I am not licensed to diagnose anyone with any form of personality disorders, I will say that he displayed all of the classic traits of a narcissist. Further, in a really exciting turn of events, I later discovered that he had been living a double life, complete with a secret online engagement to a woman halfway across the world who he had never even met in person. It boggles my mind still. However, believe it or not, looking back, I could not be more grateful. And we'll talk about why. And then part 3, the shift within the book, it becomes part story and part workbook. It's designed to help others navigate their own turning points, to rebuild with intention, to begin again with courage, clarity, and purpose. Now, I will say quite honestly, some of the advice in that third part may seem simple, especially to accomplished women like you. But here's the thing. For so many, when you're in the middle of the storm, even the most obvious truth can feel out of reach. When you're trying to survive the day, you're not strategizing, you're not dreaming big, you're just hoping to make it to bedtime in one piece. And that's why I wrote the book the way I did, because we all have moments where we need someone to hand us a flashlight and say, hey, you are not alone, and here's a path forward. In many ways, looking back, this book ended up being the book I wish I had when I was going through my own storm. So today, my talk will follow a similar arc, but I'm also going to take you beyond the pages. I'll share the decision to write it, the process of actually doing it, and the unexpected journey that has unfolded since I hit publish. Because the story didn't end when the book launched. In many ways, for me, that was just the beginning. And with that, let's dive in. So I think it's fair to say that I've lived through a few plot twists when I still intend on pitching to Netflix. Some of them were heartbreaking, some surreal, and all of them full of lessons and turning points. I'll be honest though, a mentor once said to me while I was crafting a version of this talk, Rya, please be careful because some of your stories might bring people down. And I completely understand where he was coming from. But here's what I told him and what I want you to know before I dive into those stories. What I'm going to share today are not sad stories. They are rising stories. They may have been painful at the time, and some are certainly raw. Most are vulnerable, but none of them are about being broken. For me, they are about becoming. And in fact, spoiler alert, these pictures are my boys and me now. One is 8, one is 16. Can't believe it still, but we are all happy. We are all healthy. We are all whole. But it wasn't always that way. I mentioned that my first marriage was to someone who struggled deeply with alcohol. And yes, I knew he was a drinker when we met, but I was in my mid-20s. I was still living that late night, solve the world's problems over wine kind of life. And his drinking didn't seem that far outside of the norm. The big difference was I outgrew it and he didn't. Soon after our first child was born, that slippery slope toward full-blown alcoholism became a rapid descent. At first, I didn't see it for what it was. He'd pass out at the table at 7:30, and I would tell myself, oh, he's just exhausted, new dad life, like a lot to adjust to. It's been a long day. And even when the truth began to emerge, I kept hoping it was just a phase. It's a stressful season, I'd say. It'll settle, he'll come around. And things did normalize as things do, but his drinking only got worse. Somewhere along the way, I became a chronic magical thinker. I kept whispering to myself, in 5 years, it'll get better. When the debt is paid down, when the kids are older, as if somehow, poof, a fairy godmother would descend and wave her magic wand and make everything okay. Oh, gosh, sorry. Whoops. Okay, here we go. See? Yay, mistakes. Too bad my fairy godmother was not here just then to avoid the mouse wheel. But here's the truth. I eventually had to learn that magical thinking might help you get through a single hard day, and it really did help me get through some intense times in a microchasm, but it can keep you stuck in a hard life for years. Because magical thinking takes away the responsibility and the ownership of taking action to change your circumstances. It makes you a passive participant. And the only way things really get better is through action. Intentional, often uncomfortable, sometimes terrifying action. For Rob, my first husband, Rob, stopping drinking was an action he was willing to take. And as much as I wanted to, it wasn't something I could do for him. By the time my son, Robbie, now 16, was 2 years old, little munchkin right there, Rob and I had already tried and failed at marriage counseling, and I was sitting across from a divorce attorney. That attorney told me, you can absolutely file, but your husband will still have your toddler for 2 weeks in the summer, a week over the holidays, every other weekend. And for healthy, responsible co-parents, I think that arrangement can absolutely work and work beautifully. But when your co-parent is a danger to himself and potentially to your child, it's not a parenting plan, it's a nightmare. So I stayed. I stayed because I believed that under one roof I could keep my child safe. I stayed because I thought I had no choice. I stayed because magical thinking told me that I was doing the right thing and that someday, somehow things would get better. And I did keep Robbie safe, but we lived through years of a roller coaster. There were short stretches of time, 5 days, 2 weeks, maybe a month. He'd stop drinking, and in those slivers of sobriety, hope would bloom again. Just enough to keep me going, just enough to infuse me with enough fuel to fuel that chronic magical thinking. But unfortunately, those times are the exception and not the rule. To the outside world, we looked picture perfect. I had a very curated social media account, right? But behind closed doors, our home was tense, it was unpredictable, it was fragile, it was angry. Um, but I clung to those images that I'd post on social media of a happy family because that was my family, and magical thinking helped me survive the harder days and helped me try and believe in that picture that I was painting. A few years later, I knew that I wanted another baby, and more than that, I wanted my child to have a sibling, that built-in best friend, the partner in life long after I'm gone. And in my mind, I was stuck there for 18 years. So if I wanted to have a baby, that was where we were going to have it. What followed, unbeknownst to me at the time, was an all-consuming 3-year battle with secondary infertility. That is, in fact, a picture of a jar I keep on the mantle in my bedroom of all of the vials of medicine that I went through that journey. I keep it as a reminder to be so grateful. Um, so if you've walked that path or know someone who has, you know that IVF is not just a medical process, it is an emotional gauntlet. And worse, it's very isolating. At the time, I didn't know anyone who had gone through it, and there are only so many negative pregnancy tests you can cry to your friends about before it starts to feel incredibly repetitive. Like in your own, not that anybody would ever say these words, but in my own head, I was like, you should just get over it. You can internalize it. Like, you don't need to burden other people with this story. How boring are you with this kind of repetitive angst? But like, how do you get over something that still isn't? Further, each month was more than a disappointing. It felt like a true loss. You're in this weird 4-week cycle where you have 2 weeks of hope, 2 weeks of waiting, and then utter disappointment for a few days. And in that time, you tell yourself there was no baby. I know that. But deep down, you had already made space in your heart. You had already made space in your head. You had already imagined their face, named them in your dreams. And every month that ended in no was devastating. Rinse, repeat for 36 months. That experience tested every ounce of my resilience because every month while you're still healing from the last loss, you have to choose try again or let it go. When all was said and done, from trying oral medications to IUI and finally over to IVF, it took $44,000, 88 doctor's visits, 4 minor procedures, and countless injections, tears, and prayers. I had doctor's appointments on Thanksgiving Day. I had doctor's appointments on Christmas Eve. I delayed family vacations and holidays. And it was so hard in the moment, but in the end it worked. And I'm so grateful that I had the resources and the means and the support to be able to go through that journey. And I held deep empathy for anybody going through it on their own now. Um, my second son, Lucas, now 8, was declared a miracle by my doctors in his presence and perfection. They had given me about a 30% at most chance of any of that being successful. And within that, every ounce of pain, every fight, every dollar, every tear was so worth it. And yet, the breaking point in my first marriage came literally right after Lucas was born. My husband at the time was supposed to pick up our older son, Robbie, from day camp. He was 8, and come get baby Lucas and me from the hospital at 4. But he never came. By 4:30, I was worried. By 5 o'clock, I was panicking. I called the day camp and Robbie was safe, thank goodness. I called my mom who lives in town and she immediately jumped into action. She was heading home from the office. Instead, she diverted course and went to pick Robbie up at the day camp. Then she headed to my house to get my car, which had the car seat already installed. And then the plan was to come get me, of course. We still hadn't heard from Rob, didn't know what was going on. Well, what she found at my house was absolutely devastating. His car was in the driveway with the windows down and the driver's side door ajar. The front door to the house was wide open and it was completely dark. She found him inside in the living room, just sitting on the couch, slouched, intoxicated, detached, acting like nothing was wrong. So she left him there and she came to get Lucas and me. During that time, I was in the hospital room alone, holding this newborn in one hand and a pen in the other, filling out his birth certificate. I made the final choice on his name by myself. And I was cradling this tiny life that I had fought for years, staring down at the full weight of my own life that I was living in that moment. And in that stillness, a hard truth landed for me. No amount of wishing or waiting was going to fix anything. I had been knee deep in magical thinking for years, believing that if I just held on a little longer, things would get better when the debt's paid off, when the kids are older. But that day in the hospital was a wake up call. And in hindsight, it was one of the best things that ever happened to me because that's the day I finally understood that there is no fairy godmother, there is no magic wand, and no amount of passive hope was going to change a single thing. That was the day I stopped waiting to be rescued and I made the decision to lead myself and my boys out of that situation. I leaned into Al Anon's 3 Cs. I didn't cause it, I can't control it, and I can't cure it. But what I could do was choose differently. I couldn't save Rob, only he could do that, but I could save Robbie, I could save Lucas, and I could save myself. And I did. I stopped simply surviving and I started choosing differently. I chose to believe in something better, even when I didn't have a fully formed plan, even if I didn't know what that next chapter would look like. And when I met with another attorney, they assured me that there was enough on record at that point to build a very protective parenting plan. Rob would have Robbie every other Saturday from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., no overnights, and he would not have Lucas at all until Lucas turned 3 years old. That was as far as we could push it. So, armed with facts, conviction, and as much courage as I could muster up, I didn't just ask for a divorce 2 months later. I reclaimed my power. I chose belief and I chose onward and upward. And in those moments, I chose to become the kind of woman and mother who acts from strength and optimism even when she's scared. And that's what relentless optimism really is. It's not fluff, it's not fantasy. That day in the hospital didn't just change my life, it redefined what optimism meant to me and was formational and foundational in who I am today. I learned, not in theory, but in the very fibers of my being, that relentless optimism is not a feeling, it's not an attitude, it's not a mood. It's a decision, it's a direction, it's a defiant, self led, soul deep choice to believe in better and to walk towards it. That is optimism in action, and optimism in action has the power to change everything. Now, I'm sorry to share this last part with you. Rob died about 9 months after our divorce was finalized. Robbie had just turned 9. We had just celebrated Lucas's first birthday. We're all summer babies. I had always held out hope that he would get healthy and whole, both for his own sake and for the boys. He could have and would have been an amazing father had he made that choice. But that healing wasn't something he was able to find. It wasn't something he was able to do. But despite that, I carry forward the belief that healing is always possible for those who are willing to choose it and pursue it. And that belief, that relentless optimism, continues to carry me forward today. Shaking that little bit off, after my first divorce was finalized, I decided to dip my toes back into the dating pool, blissfully unaware that I was about to receive a master class in narcissism. I downloaded the apps as one does. I started swiping left and right. I kept asking my mom which way is the correct way. Mostly I swiped left. Sidebar, like, while online dating is a deeply flawed system, it's also unfortunately the best one we've got. We can talk about that all the offline if you guys want to at some point. But I went on a lot of first dates. I went on far fewer second dates. And eventually I did meet someone who seemed to have real potential. At first, it felt like a fairy tale. I had been so starved for attention and for validation, for recognition and feeling seen. Um, and he was charming, he was attentive, he was romantic. He seemed to be everything I had ever hoped for, which in hindsight makes perfect sense because my perfect match is exactly who he was pretending to be. That is not him. I'm not trying to get sued. But he was wearing a mask, love bombing, and laying the foundation for what would eventually become a trauma bond. And as you've probably guessed, that mask slipped and slipped quickly as soon as he felt like he had control in that trauma bond in place. The fairy tale turned into a gritty documentary with a full lesson in gaslighting and manipulation. And then came the grand finale, the betrayal so surreal that I contend it still could have its own Netflix limited series. The betrayal was not a one night mistake. It wasn't a moment of bad judgment. This man, while legally married to me, was actively engaged to another woman. He was verifiably engaged to someone halfway across the world whom he had never met in person. And this part still gets me. They hadn't even video chatted until close to the end of their 18-month engagement. I, it's, I, yeah, I mean, I have a middle distance boyfriend right now, and by that I mean he's 45 minutes away and we still FaceTime almost every day. Like I can't understand that. It's mind-boggling, but I think it goes to show just how deeply entrenched he was, and maybe she was as well, in putting on a fake persona and believing in this false reality. But regardless of their FaceTiming or not habits, they were apparently planning a wedding. They were coordinating rings. They were talking about efficiency. They were talking about dresses, looking at apartments online in Australia. Because it turns out that no matter how smart you think you are, you can't actually trick the Australian government into letting you cross its closed borders during COVID. So online was what they had. He was sending her extravagant gifts. They were building a pretend life while I, his actual wife, was in the dark trying to repair something that it turns out wasn't even real to begin with. I later learned there was no conversation between them about him divorcing me. There was no honesty. He was playing soulmate from afar with this woman who knew he was married and apparently didn't care. Me, I found out by accident. First, I saw some flirtatious public comments on a public social media page, and then I found the ring in his sock drawer. It was 3 carats, $20,000, invoice included, as if I needed the receipts. It was one size too big for my finger, and so I knew instantly it wasn't for me. I will say at the time I was wearing a $50 cubic zirconia ring from JTV. So she got Tiffany, I got late night cable. But had she ended up with him, she would have gotten the real prize, and that's totally fine. Um, but here's the thing, as painful as that moment was, it was also such a gift because it stripped away the illusion. It burned through the fog of gaslighting and helped clear my vision, leaving behind only truth. And now I know that that wasn't life falling apart, it was falsehood being burned away. My mom said it best at the time. As I was unraveling and mourning a marriage that never should have happened, she said to me, Rya, you're not mourning the loss of a marriage, you're mourning the death of a man who never existed. And that is exactly how it felt, and that is exactly how I view it. The experience taught me something I now hold sacred, which is we don't always get to choose what happens, but we do get to choose what we do next. So pain is real. Betrayal is its own kind of heartbreak, but healing and hope are also real. And sometimes the thing that feels like the end of everything is actually the beginning of something better than you ever imagined. Yes, it hurt. Yes, it broke me open. But when the dust settled, I realized that this wasn't life falling apart. It was life finally falling into place. And so now when life gets hard, and it still does sometimes, I ask myself a simple but powerful question. I say, Rya, what if this isn't the end? What if this is a plot twist? one that's setting me up for something better than I ever could have imagined. Now, here's the real kicker. Even after the marriage ended, we still co-owned a business. Yep, owning a business with your narcissistic ex, 0 stars, do not recommend. But the business was something I had built and that I believed in. It mattered to me. So I stayed and thought for a time that maybe it could work. At first, I told myself, just keep the peace, don't rock the boat, protect the business. But the truth is, there is no peace when your boundaries are constantly being crossed, and there's frankly no leadership in self-abandonment. When it came to dealing with him, I was living in a near constant state of fight or flight. I realized that PTSD for narcissistic abuse victims is very real. Um, when an email or communication would pop up and I would see his name, my heart would start racing. Um, and I realized that that wasn't sustainable. So one day I had to make a quiet but powerful decision to stop prioritizing his emotional stability under the name of protecting the business and really start protecting my own peace. And it was hard. It was a slow process. It took practice and it took intention and it took time. And while I would advise anyone dealing with a narcissist or somebody with narcissistic tendencies to go no contact as soon as you can, that wasn't an option for me. So within that experience, I did the next best thing. And over several months of practicing those boundaries and practicing separating myself from the emotion of those interactions, I reclaimed my power anyway. I was able to turn that situation into an opportunity to rebuild my boundaries and learn how to stand in my strength even under that pressure. So I did start setting small boundaries, clear, neutral, professional. I no longer would respond to text message. I wouldn't accept phone calls. I kept our communication strictly to email and Slack. But regardless, he pushed and I held. He escalated and I did my best to disengage. I gray rocked. I only responded to professional matters, no matter how many personal bombs he tried to throw into his communications. And I intentionally became the most boring, unbothered version of myself. And let me tell you, there is something deeply empowering and incredibly satisfying about receiving a 5-paragraph, rage filled email and replying with one calm word: disagree. He didn't change, but I did. My nervous system regulated, my confidence came back, and my power returned full force. And then I had the most freeing realization of all, about 18 months in. I decided I didn't need to win anymore. I just needed to walk. So I sold my share of the company because no amount of profit is worth your peace and no paycheck is worth your power. And in walking away from what no longer aligned, I created space. I created space to live and lead from strength instead of survival. I created space to rediscover my own voice, to reclaim my purpose. And even though I didn't know it at the time, I created space to finally pursue the dream I had begun carrying, or I had been carrying quietly for years. It was maybe 4 weeks after I sold the business that I started writing my book. I had time, I had clarity, and I had that desire. Now, I am not suggesting that you need to burn it all down, but I am saying this: boundaries are not resistance, they're responsibility. Boundaries aren't walls that keep people out, they are guardrails that protect what matters most: your peace, your value, your values, your purpose. As all of this unfolded, the unraveling of my first marriage, the long IVF journey, breaking a trauma bond while trying to heal from betrayal and still build a business, I began sharing little pieces of my story, quietly, carefully, with trusted friends. And almost every time I said something hard out loud, someone would respond with, "Me too." And they would share their own stories of heartbreak and healing, of failure and reinvention. And in those conversations, something truly beautiful happened. We built stronger connections, and we both or all began to feel less alone. I've now spoken with multiple women who have come up to me and shared that their partners also led secret lives. One who had a whole other family. And in all of those conversations, we ended the same way. We would ask the question, why did it take us so long to talk about this? When I started sharing, really sharing about the betrayals, the IVF journey, the boundaries, the heartbreak, people leaned in. And I realized that when you tell the truth, especially the hard truth, you give other people permission to do the same. And that's when healing deepens. We consoled each other, we supported each other, we celebrated together. There is nothing more powerful than women showing up for each other and cheering each other forward in life and in business. And that's why I love and celebrate groups like this. At the root of that power lies vulnerability. Because vulnerability creates connection, connection builds community, and community fuels resilience. And so that is why I wrote the book, to say to anybody I might not have the opportunity to cross paths with, and people that I do, if you're in the storm, you are not alone. I wrote it to remind people that joy and hope are still possible on the other side, and to offer a few simple tools that might help them get there. This book was my attempt to reach a hand through the darkness to someone who may need it. And I mentioned this briefly earlier, but what I didn't know when I started writing was that the book I was writing ended up being the book I needed when I was in the thick of it. For a long time, I worried that being vulnerable would cost me respect, that it would invite judgment. But here's what I've learned. Vulnerability doesn't diminish you, it amplifies trust. And with the right people, authenticity is magnetic. Which brings me to the next part, actually writing the book. Of course, there's the technical process of sitting down and forcing words onto a page, reminding yourself that even messy, badly written gobbledygook is better than a blank screen, and encouraging yourself with the thought that that's what editing is for. But there was another kind of work that I was not prepared for. Writing the book required me to go deeper, to re-examine what I had lived through with new eyes and a different lens. It forced me to confront something that I hadn't previously really addressed out loud, and that was shame. The shame I carried about what I had allowed, the lies I believed, the behaviors I tolerated, the red flags I ignored, the moments that I stayed when I should have left. I consider myself a strong, intelligent, capable person, and yet I stayed. Not once, but repeatedly. And what I came to understand, and I do share about this in the book, is that that shame was misplaced. Because when you're in it, when you're in that storm of manipulation, when gaslit becomes your new normal, it's like living in a thick fog where truth is obscured, everything is muddled, nothing feels black and white. In addition to that, the situation that you're in doesn't always feel bad. It may not even usually feel bad. And that's part of what makes it so confusing. It's this vicious, painful cycle layered with self-doubt and trauma bonding. You learn to not trust yourself anymore and to only trust the lies. When I met my ex with narcissistic tendencies, thank you, lawyer, I was confident, capable, successful. Um, I was the kind of person people sought out. I was emotionally intelligent. I'm deeply loving. I wasn't weak. I would not have considered myself an easy target. But here's what I've come to realize. Narcissists and abusers don't target weak people. They often go after strong ones, people with light, people with empathy, people with these qualities that they envy or want to control. They also target people with the kinds of qualities and attributes that make their targets amazing and healthy relationships. A deep sense of accountability, a belief in giving benefit of the doubt and true partnership, a deep desire to do the work, whatever it takes. Me and you versus the problem, never me versus you, which is great in a healthy relationship, but in an unhealthy relationship can make us hold on a little too long and fight a little too hard. And in a cruel twist, it's all of those qualities that make us strong, that make us capable, that make us successful, that make us great partners, that attract an abuser and also become the very traits that they try to destroy. So what I remind myself of now, and what I say to anyone who's lived through or is living through anything like this, being abused is nothing to be ashamed of. And I first started saying being a victim is nothing to be ashamed of, and it's not. But to me, victim is a very different word. Victim implies you don't have control. And we can talk later about victim mentality if you want. I'm cautious with that word, but being abused is nothing to be ashamed of. It is not your fault. Help is available, and recovery is absolutely possible. So, with that, writing the book gave me the space not just to process the past, but also to grow beyond it. And really addressing those hard truths and confronting my own self-perceptions was incredibly powerful for my healing journey. Was I perfect? Absolutely not. Were there things I could have done better throughout all of those years? 100%. But we can only do the best we can. We can only do our best with the knowledge we have at the time. And as scary as it was, especially for a perfectionist like me, I decided that if I was going to write this book, I had to tell the whole truth, which meant being incredibly honest, especially with myself. Now, writing the book is one kind of vulnerability, but publishing it, that is next level. Writing is private, publishing is public. Not only are you putting your own story out there, but you're putting your own work out there. Every word on that page is mine. I felt like I was opening myself up not only to the personal side of my journey, but my writing style. I mean, it encompasses the whole gambit of person and doubt and vulnerability. And when the moment arrives and you realize that your words, your soul on the page will be out there for anyone to see, something happens. An inner voice starts whispering, who am I? Who am I to think that my story matters? Who am I to think that I could write a book or share a message that anyone might care about? That voice is imposter syndrome. Author, speaker, and comedian Callie Beaton once said 97% of people are affected by imposter syndrome, and the other 3 are sociopaths. I think she nailed it. So yeah, if you've ever felt like a fraud, congratulations, you're human. Welcome to the club. And while I don't have a magic wand to erase imposter syndrome, I do have some reframes and mindsets that help me meet it with grace and keep going. One I come back to often was gifted to me in a conversation with my friend and professional speaking mentor, Shola Richards. If you don't know him, look him up. He's amazing. He is an internationally renowned speaker and an all-around powerhouse. He once said to me, Rya, on a scale of 1 to 10, where would you rank yourself in terms of expertise on relentless optimism in life and leadership? I was feeling pretty good about myself that day, so I said, Shola, I think I'm a 7. And he smiled. He said, perfect. Now, there are people out there who are 8s and 9s and 10s. They have PhDs. They write dissertations. They do clinical field research. Your work and your message might not be for them, and that's okay. But there are also millions of people who are 1s and 2s, 3s, 4s, and 5s. The ones who are just starting to reach for the light. The ones who need your story, your words, your heart, exactly as it is today. And I think about that often. That conversation was incredibly powerful for me because it reminded me that someone needs your voice exactly as it is. And so I hit publish. And then I did something even scarier. I started saying out loud, I wrote a book. You can buy it on Amazon. And that meant reconciling the fact that I was now sharing something deeply personal in a very public way, including with my entire professional network. And I had to sit with that discomfort. And I asked myself, what will they think of these different sides of me in my life? But here's the truth that I landed on. We all have multiple facets. None of us are just our job titles or our LinkedIn bios. We are whole human beings. And most people understand that. And the people who do understand that, they're your people. And the people who don't understand that, they were never your people to begin with. Then came the really scary part. I started saying, I wrote a book. You can buy it on Amazon. And I want to share this message of relentless optimism from the stage. That is my dream. And let me tell you, saying that dream out loud is terrifying. Because when you voice something big, especially that's outside of your box, that doesn't fit neatly into your resume, you open yourself up to judgment, to misunderstanding, to people asking, who does she think she is? In my career, I've always prided myself on being polished, on being professional, on owning my lane. But this was something other. So I sat with it and I did the only thing I could think of. I gave myself grace. And I trusted that the people who mattered would give me grace too. What I've learned is not everyone will cheer for you, and that's okay because this journey is not about them, it's about you. And there is something even scarier than being judged, and that is living a life where you always wonder, what if? I don't want to live a life of what ifs. I want to live a life of I dids. So when imposter syndrome knocks, when I feel like unpublishing the book, when I feel like deleting all of my social media content and shrinking back into a safe little corner of my life, I sit with that discomfort and then I ask, why not me? Why not me? Don't I also deserve to chase joy, to share my voice, to live my why? Why me? Why not me? So for me, overcoming imposter syndrome starts with that reframe and the very powerful reminder that you belong in every room you walk into. You bring value just by being there, and you get to choose who sits in your front row. Okay, so thank you for listening to my monologue. We've covered a lot so far about belief, boundaries, reframing, connection, courage, and I think each one of those could be a talk on its own. But before we get to the close, I do want to open the floor, stop sharing. If something resonated with you, if you want to share part of your own story, if you've got a question, or if you're just curious about how the person with narcissistic tendencies first video chat went with his online fiance, maybe you want to know what happened when he actually set foot in country, let's talk. You're on mute, Kim.
Thank you. I need to learn how to use Zoom. That was so good. Excuse me. We do have a few questions, so I'm going to toss it over. I think Jen, your question got answered in the chat already, so that was good. She loved one of your quotes.
Okay.
And then Alicia, I think you had something that you had dropped in the chat.
Yes. So again, I loved the book. I thought it was
Thank you.
fantastic. But as you were talking and as I was finishing reading up the book, I thought about if you could add one more chapter, one new chapter
Ooh.
based on and reflecting on all that you've learned since the book's release, what would you title it?
What would I title that new chapter?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good one. I might chapter it, title it, might chapter it. I might title it Learning How to Be Fluent in English. And after that, I might title it Beyond the Pages or The Book Was Just the Beginning. Maybe the
Okay.
beginning.
Cool. Cool. And then I read all the reviews. I read all the Amazon reviews. So what surprised you most about people's reactions to the book?
There was overwhelming positivity, and I was really appreciative of that. And you put a message out there and you hope that it lands, and you never quite know if it's going to, right?
Yeah.
And that's where imposter syndrome comes in because I've had Lee Filestra, who blurbed the book on the front. She's a psychiatrist. She's amazing. She was very encouraging. She, of course, read the book before she blurbed it. And I was on like dying a little bit before I knew if she was going to provide a blurb or not. And so that was incredibly bolstering. And I think about that sometimes. But I think that the most powerful review for me, and I actually have a big post about this on LinkedIn, is I have one-star review. And that review uh, was very impactful and it really hits your imposter syndrome, right? And I had to sit in that, and it was a good life lesson. I had to sit in that and really absorb what they said and try to figure out why. And the review was based solely on the fact that while I was in a marriage to an alcoholic, I chose to have another baby. And not chose to have another baby, but actually to fight so hard to make that happen. And um, yeah, and I had to sit with that. But what I came to is, we all make the best decisions that we can in the moment with the information that we have. And I would not change that decision in a million years. It was the right decision for me. I'm so blessed and honored to be the mom to those boys, and I would not change that in a million years. It also showed me that we don't know what other people are struggling with. I don't know what that person has gone through, because our experiences color our own view of the world. And she didn't get very far in the book. I think I cover IVF in like chapter 3, and I'm pretty sure she stopped reading right then, and that's okay. Um, I'm still waiting to find out who read 6 pages on Kindle Unlimited and stopped. Like, you didn't even get to like the prologue, sister. But anyway, so that yeah, that made me really kind of again confront all of those issues and have to resettle into my why, and resettle into, I give myself grace and I know why I did the things I did, and I'm okay with that.
That's so great. Lauren, welcome. I saw that you joined us a little bit late. Welcome. Glad to have you here.
Hey, Lauren.
This was a fantastic, fantastic first bookmark that. I
Yay.
love I have goosebumps. I love the the process of creating the book, like weaving that into the conversation, but also just kind of walking through the various learning places along the way. I remember when I first approached Rya for the opportunity to do this, and she was so just excited to do it, but she's like, I need to tell you, my book is very personal.
Yeah.
I know it's not a business book. And I said, no, you know what? That's perfect. I said, because at FemFoundry, you've got to really be looking at both sides of the coin, right? It's the personal and professional that, when they come together, make up who that female entrepreneur is, right? You can't really just think about it in one lane. And so I just love the fact that this was such a personal journey, and thank you for being so vulnerable with us. And I love the fact that we were able to have you on and share this with us, and let us be one of your guinea pig groups,
Yeah.
to hear your new platform. And I will say, I just recently sat in on a TEDx Atlanta session that was filmed, and just listening to you talk, I really do think Relentless Optimism needs to be a TEDx talk. So I would
Good.
highly encourage you, and happy to connect you with some folks on that, because I do think you have a beautiful message to share that could be super powerful
Thank you.
in that venue. So,
I
well,
would
with
love that.
that, we will talk.
Okay.
Okay, you want to wrap us up real fast? I know
Yep,
some of you may have to hop off. If you do, that's okay. Raz got a quick close and
I do. I'll pick
go.
up the pace. I'm going to pick up
Okay.
the pace. Okay. Let me get back to those slides. We need those support images and quotes. Okay. So, thank you for your questions. Um, I know we've talked a lot about relentless optimism, belief, mindset. Did it not share? There we go. Sorry about that. Belief, mindset, boundaries, grace, courage. For me, it all comes together in what I call the silver lining mindset. And that mindset is about flexing that optimism muscle, especially when it feels weak. It's about asking, even in the middle of something hard, what's the opportunity here? What am I learning? What's trying to grow in me right now? Because outside of having a flat tire on a rainy day, life isn't just happening to you, it is happening for you. And one of the simplest, most powerful shifts that I use is I switch have to with get to. You don't have to take that client call, you get to build a business. You don't have to juggle work and family, you get to lead both. You don't have to check under the bed for monsters for the third time. You get to be the person who makes your child feel safe. But I mean, listen, we're all human. Some nights it is absolutely, please go the bleep to sleep, my love. Samuel L. Jackson would agree. But this reframe, to me, it pulls us out of resentment and it pulls us back into gratitude. And the funny thing about gratitude is that once you start practicing it, it doesn't just shift how you see your own life, it changes how you see everyone else's too. Because when you start proactively noticing the good, you can't help but notice the humans behind the hard things. You start to think maybe they're just doing their best too. And that's where grace comes in. Grace changes how we move through the world. It softens the edges, helps us pause before reacting, helps us look a little closer before assuming, maybe breathe before judging. Because the truth is that most of the time, we don't know what other people are carrying. I know only my mom really knew the very depth of what I was going through while I was going through it. And the fact is that some struggles, maybe even most struggles, are invisible, but they're still there. You know, with a 16-year-old, this analogy is ever present, top of mind, but new drivers put a sticker on their car. Student driver, please be patient, right? And suddenly we are more patient. We're more patient with their slow turns. We're more patient with their nervous stops. But no one walks around with a sign that says grieving a parent, getting a divorce, survived abuse, going through IVF, lost a job, feeling broken, woke up anxious and could use a little patience. But imagine if they did. Or better yet, imagine if we gave them grace anyway. Because grace is one of the biggest gifts we can give to others and also to ourselves. Now, you've heard a lot of stories today, some messy, hopefully you found some redemptive, some hard won, but underneath it all is one truth, and I believe this fervently. As Sophia Bush said, we are all allowed to be both masterpieces and works in progress at the same time. We are shaped by the stories we tell, and especially by the ones we tell ourselves. There is nothing more powerful, more influential, more defining than your inner voice. So ask yourself, what story am I telling? And what world am I training myself to see? Relentless Optimism says you've lived through hard things and you're still standing. You have led, built, parented, persisted, often without applause. You've earned your peace, you've earned your place, you've earned your wisdom, and you have earned your voice. And the next chapter, you get to write that. When I asked myself, who am I to dream this big? A better question whispered back, why not me? Why not a woman who's lived through it, learned from it, and wants to help others rise too? Why not someone who's choosing alignment over approval, growth over comfort, and legacy over noise? Why not a woman who wants to live boldly and show her kids that chasing your dreams is absolutely worth it, win or lose, succeed or stumble? Relentless optimism is not about pretending life is perfect. It's about believing that something better is possible and being brave enough to go after it. It's about showing up for your business, your family, your future, and most importantly, for yourself. Not why me, but why not me? And if I get to ask that question, so do you. If it is audacious to hope, to dream, to believe, to act, then I say, let's be audacious. So here's my call to all of you, to all of us. Keep believing, keep building, keep dreaming, keep chasing, and keep choosing yourself. And above all, stay relentless. Thank you. And thank you so much for having me.
I got goosebumps. Whoa, that was so good.
Thank you.
Well, Rya, thank you so much for being with us. Everyone, thanks for joining. So good to see you, Meredith, Lauren, Jen, Alicia. Really appreciate you joining us for today. We've got another great webinar coming up in the beginning of November, which is very soon, around the corner, around marketing. So check that out. Excuse me. And we look forward to seeing everyone again soon. Bye, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you.